Introduction to Back-to-Back Supply Creation and Fulfillment. This will be the first of 4 topics in Part 3 of our course. The learning objectives for this section are as follows. After completing this lesson, you should be able to describe the purpose of back-to-back fulfillment and identify the scope and types of back-to-back fulfillment processes. Our first section describes what is back-to-back supply orchestration and how it can be used in a cost-effective manner. You'll also learn the difference between supply orchestration and order orchestration and how the fulfillment process is selected. This diagram depicts the back-to-back supply creation and fulfillment. The back-to-back process, where the supply is received at the warehouse and then shipped to the customer, is a mechanism for cost-effective fulfillment of high-cost, non-stick, or slow-moving products. Customers would typically use this fulfillment method when they either don't want to utilize warehouse space to stock items that rarely sell, or when the items are high-cost and therefore expensive to maintain as on-hand inventory. A basic example might be where the back-to-back fulfillment could be used for specialized medical equipment. Some specialized medical equipment is very large and or expensive to build, so not practical to store in a warehouse, and the equipment is rarely ordered since there are few facilities with medical practitioners who actually use the equipment. This would be an ideal scenario for back-to-back fulfillment. In this use case, the medical facility orders the specialized equipment, and once the order is placed, sourcing rules will determine if the equipment should be manufactured in-house or procured from a supplier who in turn might manufacture the item. Once the manufacturing or procurement process is complete and the medical equipment is in the designated warehouses, then the item is shipped to the medical facility. There might be other scenarios where warehouse space is very expensive or limited in some regions, so items are stocked in a less expensive central location. When customers close to the expensive region order products, the goods are transferred from the central location to the warehouse closer to the customer and then shipped out. This is another use case for back-to-back fulfillment. This flow depicts the order fulfillment process. Back-to-back order processing can coexist with business processes for dropship and standard fulfillment flows, and in fact, some order management tasks are shared among the flows. If customers choose to implement more than one of these order fulfillment processes, the fulfillment method used for an ordered item is chosen at runtime based on order scheduling results. The flow shown here represents a high-level view of the order orchestration that occurs within order management. In the back-to-back fulfillment process, supply orchestration is also required. The supply orchestration is initiated by the request supply task. The difference between supply orchestration and order orchestration is that supply orchestration focuses on creating supply in an internal warehouse, and order orchestration focuses on getting the product to the customer. Since in back-to-back fulfillment, the supply isn't kept on hand in the warehouse, both supply and order orchestration is required. Supply orchestration gets the goods for the order into the warehouse, and then order orchestration ships it to the customer. The fulfillment process is selected in order management after the sales order line is scheduled. Scheduling results are based on rules which are set up in global order promising. The back-to-back enabled flag is selected for an item in organization combination within the product management setups. This flow depicts the back-to-back order fulfillment process. The rest of the back-to-back curriculum will focus on the supply orchestration steps that take place once order management assigns back-to-back fulfillment process to a line and order management requests supply for that line. The remaining order management steps are not covered because once the supply orchestration portion of the back-to-back fulfillment is complete, the order management ship and invoice steps are functionally identical to the same task in the standard order flow. The next section describes the process flow of back-to-back fulfillment of standard items. This diagram depicts the back-to-back fulfillment of standard items. In the order management swim lane, you can see that the task reviewed in the order orchestration slides. You can also see that once supply orchestration receives a supply request from order management, a supply source recommendation is also sent from order promising. The demand information from order management and the supply recommendation from GOP are combined into a supply order in supply chain orchestration. You can maintain detailed reservations to customer orders for items using the back-to-back process or incoming supply that you manually reserved to the order. After the goods are completed or received, the reservation adjusts from the incoming supply document to the on-hand quantity at the most detailed level possible. Items not using serial or lot control are detailed to the sub-inventory and locator level, while lot or serial controlled items are detailed to the sub-inventory locator and lot or serial level. If using project-driven supply chain processes, the project and task attributes are also included in the reservation as well. Depending on recommended source, supply chain orchestration sends demand information to either manufacturing, procurement, or inventory. Those applications will provide the supply, which is then shipped to the customer. You'll notice that supply chain orchestration sends a request so that the supply generated is reserved for the sales order within order management. This will ensure that the supply is used to fulfill the customer order instead of being stored in a warehouse or accidentally used for some other purpose. The next section will describe the back-to-back fulfillment process flow when you need to create a purchase order as part of the creation of supply. Here is the back-to-back buy flow in swim lane order. Within order management, the customer order is taken and validated. The order is submitted for scheduling, which then starts the fulfillment process. In the order promising lane, Global Order Promising recognizes that this is a back-to-back fulfillment and does two things. First, it sends the scheduling information to the order management system. Then, it sends the supply creation information to supply chain orchestration. Supply information in this case will include a buy recommendation and a supplier site data. In the supply orchestration lane, this sends the request to procurement to create a purchase order as per the supply payload coming from GOP. Upon creation of the PO, it will send a request to inventory to reserve the PO against the specific sales order. Then, it tracks the progress of PO and manages any changes in the PO or the sales order. In the procurement lane, this takes care of creating and dispatching the PO. And within inventory management, this will take care of reserving supply against the demand. Once the purchase order has been received, it'll receive the finished good and then add it to the warehouse stock for the sales order. Then finally, for the shipping of the sales order, this takes care of sending the finished goods from the warehouse to the customer. Our next section will now describe the back-to-back fulfillment process flow when the supply is being created by manufacturing in the fulfillment organization. This process flow is similar to the previous one, except that the supply here is created by manufacturing instead of procurement. For this flow description, only the steps that are different from the back-to-back buy flow are going to be highlighted. So our swim lane steps are as follows. Within order management, again the customer order is taken and validated. The order is submitted for scheduling, which then starts the fulfillment process. Within order promising lane, GOP recognizes that this is a back-to-back fulfillment and it does two things. It sends the scheduling information to the order management system and it sends the supply creation information to SEO. Supply information in this case will include a make recommendation. In the supply orchestration lane, this takes care of sending the request to manufacturing to create a work order as per the supply payload from GOP. Upon creation of the work order, it will now send a request to inventory to reserve the work order against the sales order. Then, it tracks the progress of the work order and manages any changes between work order or the sales order. In the manufacturing lane, this is where we create and complete the work order to create the supply. Then finally, within inventory management, we'll reserve the supply against the demand and we'll ship the sales order, which takes care of getting the finished goods from the warehouse to the customer. This section will now describe the back-to-back fulfillment process from when supply needs to be transferred to the fulfillment organization from somewhere else within the organizational structure. The back-to-back transfer flow is similar to the buy or make flows, except that the supply is being created by transferring inventory from one organization to the fulfillment organization. Here again, only the steps that are different from the back-to-back buy or make flows are highlighted within our flow. In our order management lane, again we take our customer order and it's validated. Order then gets submitted for scheduling, which starts the fulfillment process. Within the order promising section, GOP recognizes that this is a back-to-back fulfillment and again performs two steps. It sends the scheduling information to the order management system and it sends the supply creation information to SEO. Supply information in this case would include a transfer recommendation as opposed to make or buy. For the supply orchestration lane, this will take care of sending the request to inventory to create a transfer order as per the supply payload from GOP. Upon creation of the transfer order, this now sends a request to inventory to reserve the TO against the sales order. Then it tracks the progress of the TO and manages any changes in the TO or the sales order. Finally, within inventory management, again we reserve the supply against the demand. Then this will create and execute the TO, which then creates supply in the fulfillment organization. Finally, we're able to ship our sales order, getting the goods from the warehouse to the customer. Our final flow overview describes the back-to-back fulfillment process flow when the supply is actually available on hand in the fulfillment organization. This process flow is similar to the other back-to-back flows, except that the on-hand supply in the fulfillment organization is being reserved against the sales order in the same organization. As with our other flow diagrams, only the steps that are different from the previous back-to-back flows are highlighted here. So in our order management lane, we take our customer order, it's taken and validated, then the order gets submitted for scheduling, which kicks off the fulfillment process. In the order promising lane, we have the same thing that happens with our other fulfillment flows, performing two options. It sends the scheduling information to the order management system, and it sends the supply creation information to SCO. In this case, the supply information will include a recommendation to reserve on-hand supplies within the fulfillment organization. In the supply orchestration lane, again it sends a request to inventory to reserve the on-hand supplies against the sales order, and it tracks the reservation and manages any changes in the reservation or on the sales order. Inventory management still serves the purposes of reserving supply against demand